Good morning. My name is Chris Line. I'm with HMB. I am coming up on 20 years with HMB. And for about 19 of those years, I have been working with various states around the country implementing grants management systems. So we have, I believe Maine will be our 15th implementation. I got started working on an implementation for the state of Ohio. And I've done a lot in the grants realm. We're excited to get to this milestone with the state of Maine. We're going to be going through 4 slide decks today, and we'll go back and forth between the slides and then a demonstration and a test site that I have locally here on my machine. And I did in the chat, I posted a, sorry, I'm trying to control my window here. I posted 4 links in the chat. They are to PDF versions of the slide decks that we'll be going through today. So you can pull those down if you want to have your own copy of those. Don't look ahead though, because you'll spoil it for yourself. So I'll go ahead and I'll get started. This first module is just kind of talking about the system and just kind of generally how you access it, how you navigate around. We'll talk about user access administration. A lot of what we'll show you today is stuff that the districts will do, but we think it's worthwhile for you to be aware of the things the districts do as part of working on the application. And I would say if you have questions, we ask that you put them in the chat, which Linda will be monitoring, and Linda will answer questions in the chat in real time, or we will save them for the end, just to make sure we have enough time to get through all the content we want to cover. So this first slide module is just kind of overall system access and how you get into the system and navigate around. So we'll get into just navigating tips, help, resources. We'll talk about how a user can modify their profile, address book, user management, are some of the items we'll hit on here. So the way you access the site, it's at main.egrantsmanagement.com. And there's also a test site that's at maintest.egrantsmanagement.com. When a user wants to sign in, they can click that Grants4ME button in the upper right-hand corner. They will enter their email address and password. Now, most of you probably don't have accounts just yet, but we will set you up with accounts here in the next few weeks before we go live with the district. So we did, and I believe Jeanette has shared there's a test account that everybody could use to hit that test site. So you do have that access to the test site, but we'll get you set up with live accounts in the prod system here in the next few weeks. You log in with your email address and whatever your password for the system is. If you've forgotten your password, you can click that forgot your password link to get an email that will allow you to reset your password. Once you sign in, and even when you haven't signed in, there's a menu on the left-hand side of the screen that has a number of links depending on the roles you have in the system that allow you to navigate between the different components of the system. Hovering on an item with an arrow expands out that item with a number of other options potentially. Once you've signed into the system, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll have a session timeout that's counting down from 1 hour. Anytime you use the links in the system to navigate around, that session timeout should refresh itself back to 1 hour. And so one of the things that happens with that timeout is as users are working in the system, like as a user goes to fill out an application, if they go to a page to work on the content in that page, they establish a lock on that page, which means other users in their district can't edit that same page while they have a lock on it. So what would happen then is if they're working in that page and they get up and walk away and leave for the weekend, we don't want them to have that page locked all weekend. So when that session times out, that lock on the page would expire and other users would again be able to access it. So that'll constantly reset as we move around the system. You'll see that when we demonstrate that's moving around or that's resetting back to 60 minutes every time. And then one thing here that I'll share that is kind of possibly unique or that trips some users up is use the navigation links in the system, whether they're buttons or links. Don't use your browser's back button. There's certain things that build up in like a session as you click through, sort of a breadcrumb type thing. And when you click the back button, it it kind of causes issues, and you'll get a message that says it can't. Don't hit your back, don't use your back button, use the links in the system. So that's something that's going to be important to users as they work in the system, is to use the links that are provided in the browser window, as opposed to trying to use your back and forward buttons in the browser. So on that left nav, depending on what roles you have in the system, you're always going to have a link to go to the home screen. User access administrators will have an administer link. When we do the demos today, I will have an administer link because I'm a system administrator, so I'll have a lot of options there that you know, some users wouldn't see. We have search links to go to search funding applications or search organizations. When you're signed in and you have a district in your session, there are links to funding and invoices to access the funding applications and the invoicing. SAU Document Library is a tool that the state users can administer to collect uploads from districts that aren't necessarily tied to a funding application. This is something you can use for sort of like one-off data that you need to collect from a district that that doesn't really necessarily tie directly to a specific funding application or the application timeframe. That's something that we'll get into when we train the system administrators on how to use that. Again, if you're in the system and you have a district in your session, you will have a link to the address book, which would give you a list of all the users for that district. MDOE resources is a library of training and program guidance documentation. This is administered by MDOE. I have put these training slides, these 4 slide decks, I put them in the MDOE resources. Those links that I put in the chat are links to those documents in the MDOE resources. You can access that even when you're not signed into the system. So those are all public documents. It's information about how to use the system. It may be kind of grant guidance or program guidance. A lot of stuff you might link to documents on like the federal education site. So just resources on how to use the system and kind of relevant grant information is what users would find there. Help for current page, you can click that link. If help is set up for that page, they can find out information about that. So for example, if you were looking at the building ranking page, you guys could set up help for that so that when users go into that page, it gives them some background about the things they can do on that page. And then there's a contact MDOE link that has information about what browser requirements they are and the various program areas and who to contact in those program areas. So specifically about the help resources, we talked about these, the MDOE resources, guidance and information about grants and about the system. Help for current page would give users information specific to the page they're looking at, and then contact MDOE. And again, all these can be accessed without signing into the system. So if a user, whether they've logged in or not, they're going to see these links on the left navigation to access if they need help. Something a user might want to do when they sign into the system is modify their user profile. So to do that, once you've signed in, that Grants4ME sign in button in the upper right hand corner is going to turn into a circle with your initials in it. This is an avatar. I had to consult with my team to figure this out because I thought it might be an avatar, but I thought an avatar had to have some sort of like a goofy photo in it as well. But apparently they're telling me no, it doesn't have to have the goofy photo. It can just be the letters. So that's your avatar. And when you click that, it gives you the option to edit your user profile or to sign out. So if you click edit user profile, that will take you to a screen where you can change, you can update your email address, change your name, change your phone number, fax number, for those of you that are receiving faxes, or there's a link there to change your password.
Chris, can I ask a question? When
Yep.
that avatar is up and there are other people in the system, will they just see their avatar, or will they see who else is in the system?
No, they will just see that it's just theirs. It doesn't give you a list of like everybody that's in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then the address book on the left navigation will show you users in the district that you're looking at. And if you click on a user's name, it'll give you their phone number and email address. So it's an easy way to kind of figure out who to contact in a district if you need to do that. Roles at the LEA level, there's an LEA view role, which basically lets somebody access the system and see their district's content without being able to update any of it. There's a user access administrator. Every district should have at least one user access administrator so they can set up and manage other users in the district. They don't have any access to actually modify funding applications or anything like that. They can just administer other users in their district. So what we're going to want to do is make sure that every district, when we set up, we're going to set up as many users as we can based on the spreadsheets you've been giving us of district users, and we'll set up as many as we can, but we certainly want to make sure that every district has at least one user access administrator. Now, you at the state can also administer district users, but I think as a practice, I don't know that you want to, because there's quite a few districts and quite a few users. So we typically would just recommend that you have a couple user access administrators in the district that manage that. Authorized rep, or sometimes maybe referred to as superintendent, they can do a lot in the system. They can edit and approve all funding applications. The LEA fiscal rep or treasurer, they can do the same, edit and approve the funding applications. And then each funding application has an update and a director role. The update role allows you to edit the content of the funding application. The director role allows you to submit the application. So the director is kind of the gatekeeper that says, okay, this thing is ready to go. So somebody that has update role to a funding application may, maybe they only care about the Title 2A grant, and there's other things in the application they don't care about. So they could go in and modify that 2A stuff, but they're not necessarily a person who knows to say, okay, this is complete and we're ready to submit it. So you might, as a district, have quite a few update users, but you might just have one or two users with the director role that's able to go in and say, okay, we're ready to submit this. And they can also initiate revisions to the application, and both the update and director role can view other applications in their district. And then there's a school principal role that is used to certify school projects and school-wide projects, specifically in the ESEA consolidated application. And so a user would have the school principal role for a specific school, as well as the LEA view role for the district, in order to be able to go in and certify the school project. And then at the state level, we have a similar set of roles. There's an SEA view, which allows users to kind of see applications as they are in progress, but not, approve or do anything with them. There's user access administrator that can administer both state and district users. Funding applications, most of them have one level of approval, and that role is either called the SEA funding application consultant, or for the ESEA, they're called regional program managers. And they can do the first level review of the funding applications, as well as approve invoices. And then the career tech applications have a second level of review. This is director, and they can approve the funding applications and the invoices. And then CTE post-secondary has a kind of a unique workflow where the post-secondary application flows through the community college system office. And so they have three roles. There's a fiscal analyst, a grant manager, and a president that review those items as well. But typically within a funding app, you're going to be most interested in these two roles of the consultant and the director, if your funding app has that. Managing
Chris?
user, yes.
Could I ask a quick question? Can those two roles, so in IDEA, those two roles are separate. Our invoicing people actually don't have any part of the application process.
Okay.
Is that something we can separate, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can separate that. Okay. So then in terms of managing users, we just like to point out that a role is a set of permissions and it isn't a title. So you might get a role in the system that isn't exactly aligned with your kind of professional title. Some users are sensitive to this. So that's not really the intent of the role. And we try to, a lot of times these role names are sort of a compromise of arriving at a name for a role that sort of encompasses various permutations of situations. So we might call it LEA authorized representative, and it's the superintendent, but it's kind of the equivalent thing. Multiple people can have the same role. A single person can have multiple roles. As I said earlier, each LEA must have at least one person with a user access administrator role in order to be able to kind of manage all the users in their district. And the users that have that role are going to have an administer link on the left navigation to be able to do that. So to create users, they would use that user access administrator screen. They can either create a new user or search for existing users. If they have maybe a user is retiring and they need to deactivate them, they could search for the existing user and do that, or they can create a new user. To create a user, you just need their email address, first name and last name. The other fields are optional. The user could set them up themselves after they get set up in the system, but minimally email, first and last name are the requirements for creating a user. The system will send an email to that user. When you click create, that email will contain a link that allows them to come in, finish setting up their account and set their password, as well as if they want to put their phone number or anything else in there. Once the user is created, you have to give them roles because a user inherently, a user isn't really active until they have roles, because the roles are saying this is what the person can actually do in the system. So without any roles, the system is aware of their existence, but it isn't going to let them really do anything. So to give them roles, you click that create role link. When we're signed in as an administrator, we have to select the district they're associated with. Within a district, they don't have to select that because the system already knows that the user access administrator is tied to that district and only lets them administer in that district. Once the district is set, they can select any number of roles they want to assign that user and click create. And then I throw this in. This is unique to the ESEA school level projects for school or school-wide projects. To certify a school level project, a user needs to have the LEA view role for the district and the school principal role for the school. So this Jill Jones here, she's with Augusta Public Schools. So she's set up with the LEA view role for the district and then the school principal role for a particular school. This would allow her to certify that school's project. And we talk more about this within the ESEA group, and we can talk about that in our sessions, but I do like to include that. I did want to include that in the slides because it is important, and it's important for the districts to understand this as well. And then in addition to creating users, you can update users, and you can search for users by, by their last name, their email, their role, or their district. You might want to give them new roles, resend a password email, update their profile, which they can also do themselves. Or as I said earlier, you can deactivate a user. If somebody's retiring or moving to another job, you can go in and delete their roles so they no longer have access to those items in your district. So I will jump over now and we'll kind of go through some of the things we just talked about. So again, this is the home page. They have announcements and reminders on the home page that you can see without being signed in. This is something that'll be administered by MDOE with whatever kind of like relevant new information there is about new grants or new things that are happening, or just the deadlines, things to be aware of. We just got kind of a generic welcome in here. I have a few items on my left nav. As I talked about, the MDOE resources and contact MDE and help page links are there. I don't have a lot because I'm not signed in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sign in. And this little guy is a password manager, so you may have some variant of that, or you might just type in your email and password. If I forgot my password, I could click there and get it, but then I submit. And now I'm signed in, and you can see I have my little avatar here. If I click on it, I can, so I'm Grants4ME administrator. I can edit my profile or sign out. I also have new links on the left navigation. I have this administer, which allows me to do a lot of things as a system administrator. But most district users would just have this user access administrator. You see I have my timeout here that started at 60 minutes and it's counting down. So let me hover here and click to edit my user profile, so I can set my phone number or whatever, or click to change my password. So there's things I can do there off of this edit user profile. What I want to do is I want to create a user. So I'm going to hover on administer and go to user access. And so I can search for existing users here, or I can create a new user. So I will create a user. This is Gina Smith from Auburn. And I just put in email, first and last name. And that creates her, but she has no roles yet, as we said. So I want to give her some roles. So and again, because I'm an administrator, I'm associated with all districts, I have to select that she's at Auburn. If the Auburn user access administrator were doing this, they wouldn't have to select that. That would, in fact, that would be locked and that would be their only option. But I'm going to give her You give her a handful of roles. I'll give her the CT secondary director. So these are all roles I'm giving her at the district level. And then what I'm actually going to do, and this is probably something you wouldn't really do, is I'm going to make her the principal at Edward Little High School. So she's principal at Edward Little High School, but she's also a fiscal rep. So she's super powerful within the district. She's authorized rep and fiscal rep. She's a secondary application director. So she can do a lot of things. She doesn't really need this. I just gave it to her for the purpose of demonstrating the principal certification stuff. So then what we can do is go back to user access. And as we said, we can search for existing users as well. So I want to search for users named Smith. And I've actually created several other Smiths in the course of setting up training material. So here's the Gina Smith that we just created. We have Sally Smith and Terry Smith as well. So if I click that email address, I could go in there and change their information. I can administer their roles. I can delete all their roles. So delete all roles just gets rid of everything. The other thing I could do is if I just want to get rid of one or two of them, I can go in here and individually remove specific roles, or I can add specific roles. But if you just basically want to deactivate the user, it's just delete all roles. You can reset their password, which sends them an email allowing them to reset their password. And then we have this user history as well, so you can kind of see what's happened. So this is there's not a lot with her just because I created her, but it says this is the person that created her. This is when she was created. These are the roles she has and who added them and when. So if you kind of want to audit, this is kind of useful sometimes to see who gave this person a role or why this person doesn't have a role. You can go in there and see the history if they had it and it was removed and those sorts of things. So let me go in here and I will show you this as I hover on search organizations. If I search for Auburn now, I can click into them. And now my left navigation is going to change because I have a district in my session. When district users sign in, it's already going to be this way because the system knows they're tied to a district. So when they sign in, it would have this and all these items on the left navigation would be there because it knows that they're a district user. So funding and invoices showed up because we know that we want to see those for Auburn. And then we have the address book, which you can see Gina Smith is in here. And obviously we don't have a lot of users in the system yet, so they're not showing up here, but as users are added per district, they would show up in this list. And then I can go back to the home screen. It's always here on the left now, Grants4ME home. You see my session timeout reset back up to 60 minutes when I did that. If I hover on my name and click that, I can sign out of the system. And again, if you don't sign out, your session would time you out after 60 minutes. So that's the first slide deck. I think there may be questions flowing into the chat, which I can't see. I can't figure out how to see the chat. But Linda should be managing those. If you have questions, please enter them in the chat and Linda will respond to those. And at the end, we can hit those, any items that weren't covered as we have time. So let me